Look, I think I can safely say there was this illusion, and I can say that because I was part of that group that assumed this was not a realistic thing that would happen, at least in the way that it did. Everyone was looking at this and questioning. I would question myself as well. What on earth does it even mean to close the Strait of Hormuz?
So it looks like the Strait of Hormuz, yes, it's Hormuz, not Hormuz, is still closed. LNG and gas and oil shipments, as well as other critical minerals and other critical products, are still stuck in the Persian Gulf. This is going to have a massive ripple effect on the global economy. I'm Borzu Deragahi. This is my podcast. It's called Badlands. You can subscribe. It's at Borzu, BORZOU.substack.com. I'm here today with Nader Itayim. He is an energy and commodities analyst at Argus, which is a big-time news and information service for people in the industry. He joins us from where? Where are you today, Nader?
I'm in Poland.
Oh, wow, great. Weren't you in the Gulf at some point?
I was in the Gulf, but it's been a couple of weeks now. We came to Poland just for, let's say, a bit of quiet time.
So I guess I just want to ask you, what is the state of play at this point? Hormuz is closed. Like, don't listen to Donald Trump's social media posts. What does that mean? And if you could just give an overview of the situation in the Gulf in terms of the tracking of ships and so on, which is, I'm sure, something that energy analysts are doing right now, watching these little blips on the map move. What do you see?
No, for sure. So first off, thank you for inviting me. It's really wonderful to be on. I mean, if we're going to try and take a macro look at this, yeah, you mentioned that this is not only an oil issue, it's not only a gas issue. This is oil, gas, LNG, this is oil products, this is fertilizers. So across the board, the global economy is being hit. It has been hit. I mean, we're now 6 weeks, almost 7 into this war. I think, I mean, I'm gonna, if I may, I will focus on the oil first. Obviously, the biggest shock, I think, was in oil and gas. Starting with oil, there was a huge, because of what happened in the Strait, because of the fact that the Strait was essentially, we don't want to say closed totally because it was never totally closed, but I mean, it's pretty much, for all intents and purposes, really, really, the flows have been disrupted. So there has been the odd ship coming out, but for the most part, those have only been Iranian vessels or vessels carrying Iranian oil. So as for everyone else, what really happened was you have about 6 or 7 countries that hug the Persian Gulf. All of those countries essentially had to shut in their production at some point, bar 2 countries. That would be Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Why? Those countries, basically, these are the only 2 countries which have alternative routes to actually send their oil a different route. So Saudi Arabia has this incredible 7 million barrel per day pipeline. It's known as the East-West pipeline. That has allowed it to maybe shift maybe 75% of what it would typically export from the Strait of Hormuz over across the country, and allows it to actually get its crude out either from Bab el-Mandeb or north through the Suez Canal. The UAE has something which is a little bit, it's less dramatic, but that's about a 1 million barrel per day, 1.5 million barrel per day pipeline that allows it to export out from just outside the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, this is the ADCOP pipeline from Habshan to Fujairah. Now, all the other countries have basically had to reduce their production to basically just enough to basically cover their own internal production, right? Their internal demand, excuse me. That's for oil products and things like that. So production has collapsed. Exports out of the region have pretty much collapsed. And we're at a point now where the world is basically trying to figure out, how do we get past this? Over the past 4 or 5 weeks, the impact, we've seen it in the oil price, right? But you're not really seeing the full impact of the losses because essentially the world, it takes time for sort of supply chains to really feel the impact. And over the last 2 or 3 weeks in particular, you have seen governments come out with different kind of initiatives to try and at least temper the impact on the economy, right? So if this continues for much longer, that's really when we're going to see the impact kick in. So this has been the stress and the worry, and this is what everyone's been warning for some time now.
You mentioned that crucial pipeline, the Saudi pipeline. Didn't it get hit? Didn't I see a report that it got hit and perhaps shut down temporarily?
Right. So this has been one of the major worries here, that yes, there are alternative routes for this crude, but what happens if they get hit? Iran has shown it's able to, hit targets across the region. So you're right. This was a couple of days ago. I think crucially, this seems to have happened after the ceasefire announcement. Okay, we started hearing reports of that a couple of days ago that the pipeline was hit. So the actual pipeline is deep underground. This is
Uh-huh.
something to say. What was hit is what is known as pumping stations. So all of these pipelines have pumping stations along the pipeline, which will essentially push this crude through. So when one of the pumping stations get hit, naturally it's going to impact flow. So what we heard yesterday from the Saudi Energy Ministry essentially is that one pumping station was damaged, and the impact here was 700,000 barrel per day of flow. So
Hmm.
what we've been seeing over the last month is, I mean, they say nameplate capacity of this pipeline is 7 million barrels. That's massive. And so if you assume, and they've been saying they've been pushing the maximum crude through there, most of that for export, but some of that for domestic use, we're losing about 10, they said 700,000 barrels per day. So that's about 10, 12% of what was going through there. So that's big. So they lost, I mean, Iran has shown, or whoever it was that actually hit this pipeline, that it's good to have alternatives, but even those alternatives are at risk.
What do you see about in terms of LNG? I mean, thankfully, at least for half of the world, winter is coming to a close, so there's not as much
Yeah.
need and demand as there were. Although it's been pretty cold in parts of Northern Europe and so on. But what do you think? Is that also going to is the spring weather going to help out with that? The impact of that? Do you think?
So look, the fact that the Western Hemisphere is going through spring now or better weather, it's definitely going to help to an extent. But if we're looking at LNG, obviously the biggest impact in LNG was seen in Qatar. It was seen at Ras Laffan, which is essentially where Qatar Energy's LNG facilities are. They're all in this massive complex. This was hit. I think 17% was the figure that they gave. 70% of Qatar's, production was damaged, or at least facilities that produce were damaged. But as of now, they're not producing. There's force majeure because they cannot get any LNG out.
Yeah.
So the countries that are mainly hit here are not actually those that are, going to be experiencing the better, weather, so to speak. It's Asia Pacific. And this is really why we've been seeing, interestingly, if you notice who has been making, those diplomatic outreach to Iran in
Yeah.
recent weeks to try and see, can you help us get some, energy out of the Gulf? It's been those countries, or at least some of those countries in Asia Pacific. That's what Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines. These are countries that really are desperate for this energy, and these are the countries that we've seen hearing, about the government essentially coming out with all kinds of initiatives to try and basically reduce demand in the country to help tide them over during this period.
What about Russia? Can't Russia alleviate some of that demand at this point? Even though it's under sanctions, apparently Trump has lifted some of those or eased some of the sanctions at least. Could this benefit Russia? And could it at least help with, okay, not with supply necessarily because there's so many restrictions, but how about in terms of pricing?
So it absolutely will help. And as you mentioned, yes, Trump came out a few weeks ago and surprised, I don't know if it surprised everybody, but he came out and said, okay, we're having issues with crude. Here, Putin, you're going to go and benefit from this. Suddenly, sanctions are lifted and temporarily. In theory, yes, that'll open up new markets or new customers who were maybe probably unwilling to buy from Russia before, thinking, okay, here's an option for us. Yes, suddenly Russia, as well as Iran, for some time now, has been offering its crude in particular at huge discounts. In a situation like this, suddenly Russia's in a position where it doesn't actually have to be offering such massive discounts. So again, win-win for them. Obviously, Europe is in a situation where even at the worst of times recently, they've been coming out, at least the rhetoric is, we do not want to be dependent on Russia. And even now, we don't want to fall back into that, familiar place that we were in for several years ago. As of now, they're managing, but obviously, if this is prolonged, then when needs must, at some point they're going to have to do that, and Russia obviously is going to try and play hardball because it can.
It's a side note, and I don't want to forget it, so I'll bring it up. Yeah, I saw an
Sure.
announcement today from Total Energies, and they were saying that
Mm.
yeah, we have all these big production problems. We got hit. We got a Saudi Aramco refinery was hit. It's out of commission for now, et cetera, et cetera. And they were listing all their problems and all the issues they have, but they're still going to make a bonanza this year because the rising, and they've worded it quite explicitly, the rising oil prices will make up for any production shortfall, more than make up for any production shortfall. Are energy companies just making a lot of money off of this crisis?